Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. Tonight, we're zooming in on Edo State, where mounting insecurity has spewed onto the streets and markets. In Ekpoma, residents and students took to the streets this past weekend to protest persistent kidnappings and the brutal killing of a young man, allegedly killed at the hand of kidnappers. The demonstration that was meant to be peaceful later turned chaotic. Videos and photos from the scene have flooded social media, showing market raids, livestock looted, and even the vandalization of the palace of the Onoji of Ekpoma. These are acts that have intensified public outrage, triggered fresh debate over the state's capacity to secure its people. In the aftermath, a 32-year-old protester, Osaje Abraham, was shot by a soldier during the unrest, a development the police have now confirmed is under investigation. And the story didn't end there. 52 people, many of them students of Ambrose Ali University, were arrested and remanded by a court following the protest, sparking civil society, students' union, and political party demands for their release, and fierce debate over the right to peaceful protest and how the security crisis is being managed. As parents, youths and entire communities now reel from fear and frustration, questions are mounting. Is the government responding effectively? Are security forces protecting citizens or suppressing dissent? And who bears responsibility for the growing sense of abandonment in Ekpoma and across Edo Central? Of course, we understand that school's resumption has now been postponed indefinitely. Tonight, we get answers and accountability. Osiobuge Okemo is Special Advisor on Media and Publicity and official spokesperson to the Governor of Edo State. He joins me to speak for government's perspective on the unfolding security situation, precisely the response to this protest and the measures being taken to protect lives and property across the state. Also joining me is Oyekachi Adekoya, security and risk management professional. Is here to provide expert analysis on the security landscape in Edo, the effectiveness of government interventions, and what the current crisis really say about broader strategies against kidnapping and violent crime. Gentlemen, let's go beyond the headlines. Let's begin with the governor's spokesperson. Very disturbing news coming from Edo, Boogie. Kidnappings, we understand, resulting in the death of youth, and then it's followed by videos as well as eyewitness accounts showing a market raid, vandalization of a palace during the protest. How did such lawlessness occur under Governor Okpewolo's watch? Is this not a indicative of a security vacuum or intelligence failure?
Thank you, Nifemi. Good to see you in the new year. We might need to tone down the intensity with which we describe the situation. Edo State is not facing the kind of security crisis that we might seem to paint on air. Earlier on, you said, okay, we'll come to the students part. Now, it's important to first state that these incidences are constrained to a particular location. It's not a reflection of the atmosphere in the whole state. What are the issues? There are issues most of us are familiar with. They have foundations in the general forest criminality, if I may call it that a lot of states are having to contend with, where we have armed criminals in the forest, sometimes making incursions into the city to cause mayhem and to commit crime. So over the last couple of months, 1 or 2 months, we've seen a slight increase in such activities around Edo Central, particularly around Urumi. And it's important to mention that this also in some ways is a result of the very giant strides and very intense attention that Governor Monday Okpewolo has paid to security. If you remember, these incidents were initially centered around Itako West, Itako Central, that's the Auchi, Okene, Kogi axis, and the Agenebode axis. But because of the intensity of the efforts of government, we've seen them move in the forest now towards where they are presently. What we've encountered in the last couple of months have been isolated cases of kidnappings where people come from the bush and they commit such crimes. So it's something the government has been on, and it's already producing results. Some of the governor's new strategies that are largely technologically driven, because I mean the solution is basic: identify where these people are in the forest and flush them out. Build the capacity to enter and flush them out, and that's already paying results. The government has invested heavily in high-tech security and surveillance equipment that
All right.
have been very useful. Just last week here, about 9 people who were kidnapped were successfully rescued, and arms were recovered. So that's basically what's been happening, and that led to some protest. What initially on the surface was supposed to be a protest, but we found out later, with the intelligence report coming in now, that these were sponsored riots, by individuals that are already being unmasked. So that's what the situation has been like over here.
We'll talk about the fallout, the 32-year-old protester who was shot by a soldier. But let me bring Mr. Adekoya into the conversation as well. From your assessment as security expert, what would you say has driven the current security breakdown in Ekpoma? Boogie said it's not the entire Edo State, that I should tone it down. So let's leave it to what we've seen in Ekpoma. I believe in Edo Central. Some have said that the insecurity in the name of kidnapping in the south is a fallout of what's happening, the onslaught against the insurgents in the northern part of the country. But what in your opinion is happening here? Failure of intelligence, manpower, coordination, or strategy?
Thanks, Nifemi. First, we need to acknowledge the fact that the Edo State government has indeed put some strategies in place to try and address the issues of insecurity. But we worry, on the other hand, that if you look at the stats on a year-on-year basis, violent crime seems to have been on a sustained uptick. The case of kidnapping is also becoming a bit more endemic. As to what is driving it, we wager, I guess, even from the information on the ground, that there are a number of social, political, and sometimes economical issues that are contributing to these factors on the ground. For example, there is now, even when these kidnappers are arrested, even the people arrested say, hey, see, it is the indigenes, the locals themselves that are bringing the victims to them to kidnap. So there's a clear case of increasing collaboration within the local polity, a blurring of the line between what you would typically call Yahoo boys to some opportunistic criminals / politically exposed armed cult groups who are also latching in on a growing industry in Edo. Then whether on strategy, we are hearing reports that yes, the governor did set up some local vigilante team. But I think in the last 3 months, if the reports are correct, they've not been paid a salary till date. We're also hearing reports that some of the motorcycles, equipments given to these local actor vigilante groups, imagine arming them and not paying them a salary. Some of the motorcycles, guns, and the rest given to them are also hijacked by political actors. So yes, you have the vigilante group, poorly equipped, poorly motivated, and then you have local politics interfering with their work. So I'm not sure how much the governor is hearing or how much of a hands-on approach. But I was saying, comparing what Governor Godwin Obaseki did do, he had a rather more hands-on approach with the command center he set up. At least information was filtering in directly, and it would appear that that governor had a more on the ground, on hands-on feel of the incidents on the ground. It does appear like this current administration, yes, they are acting, but they may be a bit too far from what's happening in the front lines.
Boogie, that's the point I expect you to jump in. Two big issues here. Vigilantes have not been paid, they have been armed, and then they're probably being hijacked by political actors. How do you respond?
Okay, thank you. So firstly, let me quickly talk about what my brother said, talking about increased violent crimes. There are different kinds of crimes, and it's important we segment them effectively. Um, it's common knowledge that before this administration came in, if you Google Edo State or Edo State security, one common factor that comes up is the cultism issue, which at a time was really, really a huge threat to our existence as a state. I mean, we counted loss of young lives in the hundreds, and the efforts the government has made in that direction are clear for everybody to see. Apart from engaging them with the carrot and stick approach, the perpetrators of these activities and holding them accountable. The governor worked with the House of Assembly to review the anti-kidnapping and anti-cultism laws to expand the scope of culpability, the people who it actually covers. The governor took it a step further by setting up a task force on security that goes into the inner cities to identify these guys. And the results are evidence for everybody to see. Last December, for example, was the first time in a very long time that we had peaceful Christmas celebrations in Edo State, and we weren't in quote counting scores. Counting scores is the term used to describe how many people have died on each cult site. So cultism has totally been, basically been eradicated in Edo State, and that's a form of violent crime that has been dealt with. Talking about the kidnapping incidents, and I'm happy my brother made reference to the motorcycles. One of the key strategies for providing those motorcycles was because the local security assets, the vigilantes and the neighborhood watch and the security corps, had said if they're able to patrol the borders of the roads, it will be difficult for those people to come from inside the bush into the highway. And if at all they do so, the time of response is quicker. You're able to go after them before they go far into the bush. And if we're sincere and we check the records and data, in recent times, we've not had too much of highway kidnappings anymore. That's a direct, impact of what the governor has done in that direction. And that's why we're now seeing a metamorphosis of their strategy of them now coming into town. And my brother was very right to have mentioned that some of these kidnappings have local collaborations. It's not easy for a stranger to just walk into a town and pick somebody up like that. It's as strange as us even seeing situations of self-kidnap, where certain people orchestrate their own kidnap, to raise income. As to the assertion that the security corps are not being paid, I don't know where my brother got that information. That's wrong. We have a very motivated, very trained, very, very inspired, and very active Edo State Security Corps, which has led to the relative peace that we see across the state, except for these few
Okay,
areas
are
where
you
there are
saying
flashpoints. I don't know where you got the information that there
are
are
you
salary
saying are you saying
conditions.
categorically that the security corps are not being owed a dime by the Edo State government?
The remuneration that is due them, they have gotten. So they get. So that I don't know where that information came
All
from
right,
about them not getting.
gentlemen.
Also about political. Also,
Yes.
okay, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead with the political hijack.
Okay, talking about the political actors, that's also wrong. There's no politicking going on. There's no active political activities going on. So there's no reason for any political actor to do anything like that. If my brother has any information about that, it would be good if he can provide it so that the government can look into
All
all of
right.
that. Now, also trying to give the impression that the last administration did a better job with security. That's not true. This kidnapping around the Ekpoma axis and Edo Central has been on long before we came in. A couple of years ago, we saw women take to the street to protest the kidnappings that have been going on there. It was in the last administration that banks in broad daylight, about 4 to about 6 banks were robbed in broad daylight in that same Edo Central, and they escaped. The party chairman of the opposition party in the last administration was kidnapped in front of his house. If there's one thing anybody residing in Edo State to testify is that urban crime has reduced to a barest minimum compared to what we had in the past. So if you look at the interventions this government has made in security, you can't compare it to what they had made.
Let
This government
me.
has provided over 80 brand new Hiluxes to security agencies. The
I
former
hear you
government
clearly.
provided second-hand Sienas that couldn't effectively manage our
I,
security.
I don't want
So
us
it's
to
very
drag this
erroneous to suggest
conversation
that what
into, comparison between Obaseki and Okwewolo. There will be ample time to do that subsequently. But there's a viral video circulating on social media showing protesters attacking livestock, killing goats, beating cows, and literally carting animals away. Mr. Adegoke, let me get your thoughts on this very quickly. What do you make of the fear of possible reprisal attacks and ethnic backlash based on what we saw in Ekpoma, and how do you think government should respond now?
Yeah, thanks, Nifemi. The name is Adekoya, not Adegoke.
Adekoya, I beg your
You seem
pardon.
to be in a Yeah, so again, like I said, again, kudos to the government, foreign administration for taking some initiative. There's some good initiative that they have taken. But you see, the complaint I make always is that when subnational governments are not doing what they should do correctly, you allow the people resort to self-help. And I will encourage the administration because governance is a very big structure. I encourage the governor through his aide who is watching live now to check his information again. We have information on the total numbers of vigilante groups raised per local governments. I can tell them on good authority that the political people at the local government are hijacking some of those motorcycles. And so some of the things you see, particularly around the East-Isako West axis, is that some things are failing. If we don't raise those, people will not raise an eyebrow. So yes, at the state command level, you can provide, but is it percolating? Is it going down? Are the issues being addressed? Do people have the confidence in the structure on the ground? Then again, another thing is that there is a bit of a concern because this raises the backlash when people resort to self-help. On good authority again, a number of the people moved into the vigilante force are, according to reports, current cultists, former cultists, and they are not given to the command structure of the vigilante structure. So the way they go about law enforcement, there's a need for training, retraining in how they gather intelligence, how they communicate with the locals, instill confidence in them, and go about addressing the issues. The government is shooting at a moving target, and I agree that within Edo Central, some respite has been achieved. But even if it's just one life, one person being kidnapped, as the spokesperson has admitted, it's now mixing up. You know, the lines are blurring up where the locals are collaborating with the kidnappers, and then an industry is forming. So we're not blaming this person or that person. We're saying that if the structure is working, then the local communities will have more confidence in it because they are seeing the dividends. If it's not working, then this is an invitation to the current administration to look again at what may be failing. And I encourage the governor, His Excellency, to invite his zonal heads of the vigilante structure to a meeting and have a one-on-one meeting with them directly. They will give you information, not what is being reported. He will get information firsthand from the zonal heads directly, what is happening, and then they can begin to move to addressing some of these issues.
I know that Boogie would like to react to that, but let me just ask this specific question because I want our viewers to gain some clarity as to what happened over the weekend. A 32-year-old protester was shot by a soldier. Police say this is under investigation by military authorities. But, you know, the real question is who called for military intervention? Was it the governor? And what's the government's position on military engagement in civilian protests? Should military personnel even have been deployed, you know, in this instance?
Okay, thank you, Nifemi. Just to quickly correct, I mean, we're on TV and we're talking about a whole state, so it's important to correct misinformation. I don't know where my brother is getting his information from, but they are not correct. The Edo State Security Network, as it was formerly called, was set up by the last administration after the NSAS situation when policemen left the road. Initially, like we always say, it was a good idea. It helped manage some of the security challenges that occurred as a result. But over time, we saw a corruption and a proliferation of that outfit. Firstly, the way they were recruited was anybody who had a gun was supposed to bring the gun to the organization. They register you and they leave the arms with you. What we saw over time was that some of those arms apart from being used for security situations, we're also being used for other crimes, kidnapping, armed robbery, cultism. When this government came in, of course, we know how that ended. It led to the death of a police officer who was shot by members of the same organization, and the IG had to proscribe it. When this government came in, this government, restructured that outfit, ensured that there was proper vetting of people coming in. The vetting is so serious that for you to join the Edo State Security Corps, as it's called presently, you need to have a letter of guarantee from your community head, from traditional rulers, and other key stakeholders who can vouch for you. The first thing the government did was to mop up the arms that were in circulation, and over 5,000 guns were taken from the hands of these people. So if you are talking about cultists being members of the Vigilante or security outfit, that was in the former administration, not in this administration. All of the 2,500 that were initially, employed were sent for training by military authorities. They basically got as much training as, substantially what this police and security agencies also get. So that needed to be corrected. The governor has top quality security advisors around him. Around the governor's closest aides are retired and serving military officers and security personnel, and they know what the issues are, and they are dealing with those issues and coming up with strategies that work. As to grassroots information, if there's one thing anybody can testify to, it is that Monday Okpebholo is a totally grassroots politician. If you follow his activities and you see the way he's constantly inspecting project sites, constantly, going and ensuring that government initiative and projects are moving as they should move, you should know that that's somebody who doesn't sit in an office and wait for information. Everything that happens, any resource that Governor Monday Okpebholo commits to Edo State development, he follows up and ensures that it gets to where it gets to. So that's another false information. No motorcycles are being hijacked. If you have one or two incidences in one or two places, it's not a reflection of the overall.
All right.
Overall
because of time, quickly.
Now, to the question you asked, let me quickly answer that.
Indeed.
The protester that was shot, the government didn't call in soldiers, the government didn't call in security operatives. Initially, like I said, it was supposed to be a peaceful protest, but from what we are finding out, it was a sponsored riot. And when things started getting out of hand, we saw some security operatives coming as part of their duties to bring some calm. Now, I don't know the details of what happened between the soldier and the protesters. I saw the video like every other person saw. But what I think happened was that, remember, these protesters blocked the road. And that road is the central road that connects the north to Edo State, the Ekpoma road. That's the very central road. And they blocked it. It's possible that the soldier was probably on that convoy and had that altercation with those people and it led to that. But the police authorities and the security services will provide more information about that. But the government of Edo State did not call in anybody, did not call in the security to quell the riot. When it started getting out of hand, the security agencies went in and did their job.
Mr. Adekoya, we're running out of time. We have to go now. Quickly, two-in-one question, if you can answer in less than a minute. What does the involvement of a soldier firing on the protester during such an arrest tell us about rules of engagement and civil-military relations in situations like this? We're also hearing civil societies, advocates arguing that arresting and remanding protesters, they say about 52 of them, especially students, is against fundamental freedoms. How should security forces balance maintaining order with respecting constitutional rights in that regard?
Yeah, and if I'm quite surprised that soldiers are involved. I thought the Chief of Defense Staff and the current Minister of Defense had given a clear directive that the soldiers should limit themselves to their theaters of operation and completely dismantle from civil engagement. Yes, I know that the soldiers have a role to support civil authority, but again, it begs the question, where did the soldiers come from? Remember that the soldier is trained to shoot to kill and not to die in the process. So the rules of engagement are quite different. There's nothing civil about calling a soldier in full military fatigue with an AK-47. Remember, I've also argued that an AK-47 is not a civil equipment. It's an assault rifle. That's what it's classed at. So if you give a soldier an assault rifle and put him in the midst of people, well, so many things will go wrong. And unfortunately, one of those things is what has gone wrong. Even our policemen carrying AK-47 is an aberration. While in the midst of people, they should carry a sidearm and, of course, have a tactical team stand close by to provide response where that response becomes necessary.
All
and
right.
then you follow the doctrine of force continuum. You escalate force as force becomes necessary. Yeah, so again, a lot of things is wrong with our internal security structure. First, we think Abuja is responsible, but we want the subnational governments to be more responsible and more engaged. Because of the improvisation, we call in the military at every time. My final thoughts to answer this question is just listen to what Buratai has said, the former chief of army staff. He has said that the soldiers have no business in internal security. They must leave that completely to civil authorities and to the police.
All right.
And I support that completely. Yeah.
We haven't finished business. We're going to return to this conversation. Oshoboge Okwemo, Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, official spokesperson to the Edo State Governor. We're going to keep following this conversation and bring you again for updates as regards the security situation in Ekpoma. Oyekachi Adekoya, sorry, I christened you again earlier. Security expert and risk management personnel. Gentlemen, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
That's our show today, everyone. Remember, you can watch it again at midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Ogunsoye.